Okay, so let's talk about another poll. This one is about racism in Iceland. Yay! So according to this poll, 57% of Icelanders believe that racism is common in Iceland.
Just when you thought racism couldn't get any more racism.
And out of those, 10% say that they are quite common, whereas 47% say that that racism is only moderately common. Well, it didn't say racist. It didn't use the word racism. It used racial prejudices. I'm just going to say racism because it's shorter and simpler. Only 25.9% say that that racism is rare in Iceland, while 16.7% say, are sort of in between or undecided. What's really shocking to me about this poll is that when divided between men and women, only 43% of men believe that racism is a common occurrence in Iceland, versus 72% of Icelandic women believe racism to be common. So yeah, almost 30% more women say that racism is a problem in Iceland, which is quite astounding. Now, let's be serious for a moment. There is a very, very simple solution to this problem. If you had polled Icelanders in say the 1970s on what they thought about racism, overwhelmingly they all would have said, "You mean there's no racism in Iceland?" That's because there were almost no foreigners. So yeah, get rid of one, you get rid of the other. Oh yeah, one interesting fact about this poll that I forgot to mention. When tested for the political leanings of the people that answered the questionnaire, not surprisingly, the potential voters that believed most highly in racism being a huge problem in Iceland were overwhelmingly voters of the Pirate Party and the Left Greens. So about 70% of their voters say that racism is a severe issue in Iceland. A little less so are the voters of the Social Democrats, Samkvæmt, and about 57% of the voters of Viðreisn and Flokkur Fólksins also believe that racism to be a problem in Iceland. Flokkur Fólksins is somewhat surprising, given that there's been so much propaganda and portraying them as being this overly nationalistic, old white racist pricks, basically, which in my experience is an absolute falsity, and I think this poll proves it quite well. On the other end of the spectrum, the voters of the Independence Party, the Progressive Party, and the Center Party were the least likely to believe that racism is an issue in Iceland. Around just over 40% of their voters or something of that believed racism to be an issue here. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Now I'm somewhat shocked by this poll because I work with a lot of migrants. Hell, I live with several migrants. My boss is from India, so yeah. And this is maybe not something we've ever talked about that much, but I get the feeling that most of them are satisfied with living in Iceland. But maybe that's the thing, they are, for the most part, satisfied with life in Iceland. I mean, why wouldn't you be, am I right? But this is maybe a facet of Icelandic life that they have to deal with, or some of them have to deal with, and the rest of us just aren't exposed to it. I mean, obviously, this is not something that I have experienced firsthand, and, like I said, when talking to my foreign friends about this, most of them haven't said that they experienced this much. Now, I also believe, and this is just me guessing here, of course, as of now, around 1 out of every 10 Icelanders is foreign born, or has 1 or 2 foreign parents. I don't know the exact numbers, but half of those are Polish, and Polish people are white. Very many of them have been here for a long time, have adjusted, learned the language, and assimilated seemingly perfectly. So yeah, not very likely to be discriminated against. Versus sure the brown migrants probably experience these things a lot more. And then of course if they don't speak the language very well, or just for whatever reason have even harder time assimilating, then yes, they are gonna stick out. It's gonna be easy to single them out, and they're gonna be therefore, logically speaking, I suppose, more likely to be victims of racism. Now, I'm not making any excuses for people with racist tendencies. Racism simply should not be tolerated in any form ever. That's not a very controversial thing to say. That's just straightforward logic. But based on my own personal research, the better integrated migrants become in a society, the less likely they are to be discriminated against, and the less likely you're gonna be to have instances of racism. Now, there has been a lot of talk on how we conduct Icelandic education for migrants here in Iceland, and as you may have noticed at some point or another, Íslenska ekki auðvelt tungumál til að læra. And one of the problems that many people see is that in some Nordic countries, like I think Sweden, but definitely Norway, learning Swedish or Norwegian in these countries is free of charge for migrants, whereas in Iceland they have to pay for seminars, and these seminars are expensive. And there has been some talk. I know that the youth wing of the Progressive Party, and I believe also the Viðreisn has also floated this idea to make Icelandic courses for foreigners free of charge. I'm all for it. However, I would add the caveat that they should be free of charge, but also mandatory. So, say you've been in Iceland for, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years, whatever is a convenient number. Hey, you've been in Iceland X amount of years, you haven't done a single Icelandic course, and you can still not speak the language to a somewhat, I don't know, proper standard, whatever that might be. And of course now I'm talking about for adults. I mean, children go to school here anyway, so, child migrants, they're gonna learn the language anyway, since, they go to school and learn it, versus for adults there is no such option unless they want to pay for it. So I would suggest that it should be free of charge but mandatory. So if you have been here for an X amount of time and you still don't speak the language, haven't gone through any courses, then you get like a slip or something that says, okay, you now have 6 months to go to some Icelandic courses. If not, you get deported. Now that may sound harsh, but no, fuck it. It is harsh, and I like it that way.
Unnecessary racism, so sad.
I'm not saying that if everybody just spoke better Icelandic that we would rid the country of racism. No, that is not gonna happen on its own. That's gonna require a lot of education and ball-sweating amounts of integration, and that takes a lot of time and patience. It's not something you can just vote in and out of office or whatever, or badger people online about until they stop it. It doesn't work like that. But you can gradually over time, I suppose, minimize its effects. Now on this channel I have previously made videos where I talked about organized crime and gang activity in Iceland, which is a real thing, believe it or not. And I still stand by these remarks. And here's the thing. You can be against racism, but also wanting tougher border security. If anything, I think tough border security is probably also a good combat weapon against racial prejudices. Because here's the thing, I have met some of these low-life scums that only come here to commit crimes, and I don't like them very much. And whenever I meet somebody from their culture, I get the natural sensation to think, gee, I wonder if it's a body of, this guy that was robbing us. By the way, that's fair sometimes, because Iceland is so small, so you meet one foreigner from one particular small country somewhere, some chance you might know that particular bad egg that you've already come in contact to, because the communities are so small. And, they often have contact with one another, But I often get the feeling that the vocist, anti-racist components of the Icelandic left over-focuses on racism and just tries their hardest to ignore the other social problems that come with come with too open borders. You know, that they completely ignore all the gang activity. That you know, there was this report that came out last year that says the analysis department of the Icelandic police commissioner issued like the code goes from yellow, green to red to black, and we are in a situation black with how severe organized crime has become in this country. And these two problems, you know, racism and the organized gang activity, exacerbate each other. That is, you know, you read on the news about all this crime and all these bad things that are happening. A lot of people are just going to associate this with any number of random migrants that they see. That's just straightforward logic. I mean, it is not logical, but that's the way just a lot of people think. It's a very simplified way of thinking. And, you know, it's like I said, it isn't illogical to think if there were no migrants there'd be no crime of this nature. That's just, you know, that's not really feasible, but that's a logical conclusion to reach. But this is my frustration with this woke culture, is that it completely ignores these problems, and you know, and things that whenever you bring them up, that you're just trying to, that you're just trying to excuse racism or whatnot, which is just absolute bullcrap. I mean, sure, some people do that, do it in that way. Probably a lot of people do it that way. But you can want law and order and hate racism at the same time. That should not be controversial. But yeah, 50% of Icelanders, 72% of women believe that racism is a common problem in Iceland. I was very stunned when I read that. I would never thought that this number would go that much up. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Respect your fellow man, oppose racism and injustice, but also oppose organized crime and lawlessness. You need to address both problems simultaneously to achieve equilibrium. That is my take on it.